Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML, Don Carpenter Show. And let's go right to the phones. I do believe on the line we should have Governor Mead. Governor, are you with us?
I am. Good morning, Don. And we're sorry about yesterday, but it's nice to be with you this morning.
Oh, it's quite all right. I know you're quite busy. It's not easy running a state, so I'm glad you're able to reschedule so quickly.
Well, thank you, and thanks for accommodating us. You know, I was traveling overseas last week and still trying to get caught up, so it's great to be back with you.
Yeah, so you just returned from Asia. Could you tell us a little bit about what you did over there and how the trip went?
Yeah, it was actually just probably the best overseas trip that I've taken. We were in South Korea and Taiwan. We started just briefly in Japan, but the main purpose of the trip was a trade mission, and in particular with regard to our natural resources. Both South Korea and Taiwan virtually import all their energy resources, and both have a varied portfolio of energy, from coal to natural gas to uranium. But both countries are moving away from nuclear power because of what they view as the scare of Fukushima, Japan, that happened. And so, just for example, in South Korea, they're anticipating in the next 10 years increase of their coal usage by 250%. The same goes for Taiwan. They have great coal needs. They import coal from Australia and Indonesia. And Indonesia coal, of course, has an advantage because of its proximity to those two countries, but Indonesia has its own internal needs for the use of that coal, and the quality of their coal is going to continue to go down. And so it looks to me, and it looks to the people, the citizens of those two places, that Wyoming coal is a very, very good alternative. And in particular in Taiwan, I tell people, had I had coal in my coat pocket, I could have sold it that day. They are very eager to get our coal, and I view that as a very good news story, because I think we should be proud of the fact that we have this great resource and that we can produce it in a safe way and in a cost-effective way. It's recognized as the fastest-growing energy source in the world, and we'd rather have Wyoming coal used than coal from other parts of the world. And so we need to get the ports open on the West Coast, but I think it helps not only for Wyoming to push on that effort, but for countries like South Korea and Taiwan to make a pull for our coal. So I hope that works out. We also were there for international trade, tourism trade in Taiwan. With the change in visas, there's a great opportunity for increased tourism to Wyoming. And also ag. Both countries have an interest in our ag products, in particular beef, but not limited to beef, other products as well. And so I was reminded when I met with the president of Taiwan that the last time Wyoming governor was in Taiwan was 24 years ago, and it was Governor Sullivan. So it was good to be back, and I think we have a great opportunity for a strong trade relationship. We already sell a fair amount of our trona, soda ash, to Taiwan, and it would be great to be selling our coal there as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And now, since you mentioned that there is such a demand for Wyoming coal, are there any new developments on the front with the Northwest states, particularly Washington, as far as trying to get the coal out of the country?
Well, the companies are still working on those issues, from the Millennium Port to other ports. It is, I think it's fair to say that it's certainly become a political issue in Washington and Oregon. But I think ultimately it will get done, because it's not only good for Wyoming, it's good for those states as well, because those ports are major economic drivers, whether you're shipping wheat or whether you're shipping coal. And as you also probably remember, I went to British Columbia earlier this year for the same reason, to encourage increased port use for coal exports. So I think it'll happen. It's difficult to determine when it'll happen, but I think, as I said, I think it's helpful for not only us to say we want to ship the coal out, but for places around the world to say we want to use the coal. And so it will take some time, but I'm confident that ultimately we can answer the questions and concerns of the citizens of those states and make clear that coal is a great product to be shipping out.
Oh, we can absolutely keep our fingers crossed. I do think they'll eventually come around and see the light. I mean, I think maybe the political pressure might be there now, but eventually it'll let up. At least I hope so.
Well, I think so too, and of course, we're not just crossing our fingers on that. We've got a good story to tell. We've got facts that show how we can do it and do it responsibly, and so our obligation now is to make sure we let people know what those facts are and how it'll be done and how it'll be done responsibly, and we can certainly do that. Cloud Peak already ships a little coal over there, about 4 million tons, which is, relative to Wyoming, where we're producing about 400 million tons, is a fractional, but that relationship's already established. And I think that's helpful for Cloud Peak and for the other companies as well, that the relationship's established. And I think it's most important from what I gained from my trip is those countries, like I said, they not only want our coal, they want it today. And so it should be a great market for us eventually.
Now, kind of shifting gears a little bit, and this report came out a few days ago. It looks like the state revenues are looking pretty good. Can you give us a little bit of info on that?
Yeah, as you know, we have the Consensus Revenue Estimating Group that provides forecasts on what they think the revenue is going to be. The last time prior to last week that they met was in January of this year, and they made their predictions. And when they met this month, they recognized that we were about $333 million over what they projected we would be in January. So that's good news. And a lot of that comes from good return on our investments. We, as a state, philosophically put a lot of money in savings, and those savings produce a lot of income. It also, we were bolstered by, good oil. We had a lot of oil activity, and oil prices have been good. Natural gas has been relatively flat, but it's certainly better than where we were, say, a year ago, where we thought, somewhere estimating it would go below $0, which is hard to imagine. And then coal, they're predicting going forward, because of the challenges with the EPA shutting down effectively old coal-fired plants and making it, with what they're proposing, near impossible to build new ones. They're predicting relatively flat coal as well. But where we are today and the money that we have available for the next budget session coming up next year, we will certainly have more than enough money to cover our revenue. And as always, we're going to recommend money go into savings because while we're in good shape, I think it's always good to be conservative and know that things can change. But it's a good news story as far as I'm concerned about what the revenue is available to the state.
And it's good to see a state that handles its money correctly. I mean, you look around the country, and there aren't a lot of examples of states that are doing so well. So it really is a credit to the way that the money's been invested, and again, all of our resources here. Now, I kind of want to shift back to the coal, since you mentioned the EPA and their new regulations on coal-fired plants, or at least they're pressing on coal-fired plants again. Is there anything that the state can do to kind of combat that?
Well, we're doing, there is, and we need to keep doing it. I testified this summer at the EPA hearing regarding the regional haze rule, which I think is completely out of whack with the needs of Wyoming and the needs of the country. And frankly, if it goes through, it's bad for coal companies, but it's worse for consumers. It's going to increase the price of electricity and all goods that are produced by electricity. Initially, a huge cost, capital cost. It would be a huge capital cost to the companies, and then for years after, it'd be a huge capital cost. On top of that, there's additional rules and regulations. So by letter, by testimony, by expressing our frustration, we're doing that, and then ultimately, the fact is we may have to litigate on that. When I first came to office, I had my Attorney General file 3 suits on the greenhouse gas regulations, and that continues on. And it's not, you never want to just immediately jump into court, but frankly, you've got to draw the line and recognize that it's not only a Wyoming interest, but frankly, I think it's an economic interest for the entire country. Coal helps us remain competitive in manufacturing and many other ways because it is a low-cost way to provide electricity to citizens throughout our country. We provide coal to over 30 states, and I can tell you that if those states didn't have our coal, they would be much less competitive because they wouldn't be able to produce electricity at the same low cost.
Well, and I don't know where a lot of these misconceptions about these coal-fired plants come from, and all somebody would have to do is come out here and visit Dry Fork, and they would see that this is it's just as clean as any other form of energy. I mean, it really is.
Well, I think Dry Fork, it's an example I use as well, Don. I mean, if I would invite anybody that has an interest in coal to visit Dry Fork, and I think many people would be surprised about how clean that is. And if you look at what's coming out, it's I've heard people up there say that visitors say, "When are you going to turn it on?" Because they don't even recognize that it's running. And it's not a coincidence that in my energy strategy, I rolled out I think the biggest picture I had was of the Dry Fork station with a rainbow over it that showed the railroad and the green grass and the wildlife all right there. I think it's a wonderful example of the improvements that we've made on coal-fired plants. And it's unfortunate, as good as that is, that if we wanted to build, add on to that or a replica of it elsewhere in the state, that the rules and regulations that the EPA is looking at, we wouldn't be able to do that. Like I said, it's not only bad for Wyoming, I think it's bad for the country.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And another thing that you have coming up next week is the Broadband Summit. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and on October 29th, we're holding my second annual Broadband Summit, and very excited about it. The first one was well attended, and we're anticipating great attendance this one. In broadband, we've increased connectivity in the state over the last 2.5 years plus exponentially. We had, when I first came on, Ethernet speeds to communities, to schools in only 2 places. And now we are looking at about 70, 80 places in the state. Just this year, we've increased broadband capacity speed by over 700% in our schools. And those are all numbers, but what I tell people is, ultimately what it is, we in Wyoming, we love our state, and we love to live here, and we want that option for our kids and grandkids. And having the ability to have that high level of connectivity helps with telecommuting, telemedicine. It provides us an option to live in the place that we love, and so we don't have our kids saying, "Geez, you can't do business here, the type of business, so I have to move elsewhere." So I think it's a great thing for this state, and I think what we're proposing for this session, which is called the Unified Network, it'll even help more. And I think Wyoming can be a real leader in technology as we see, Microsoft coming in, the NCAR supercomputer that is here, as we see companies like Ptolemy and Sheridan and other tech companies popping up around the state. It relies upon connectivity, and the private sector has done a wonderful job in partnership with the state in expanding that, as I said, exponentially.
Yeah, and again, coming from back east where you're kind of used to it, but again, we don't have the wide open spaces that Wyoming has. It's a beautiful place to live, but in order to remain connected, you do have to kind of bridge those gaps in the wide open spaces to keep the internet speeds up to par, which as much as people might not think it's a big deal, it really is essential to every aspect of business at this point.
Well, it is, and it's you're right. I mean, we love the wide open spaces, but it creates a challenge when it comes to broadband and the fiber. But when we can, as we are starting to, but I think we've got a long ways to go. When we can bridge that gap, we can say, listen, we've got the wide open spaces, the beautiful spaces, the great wildlife, the great quality of life. And, hey, you can run your business here. We have the connectivity that allow you to do that. And that's not only good for my generation, but for the generation coming up. That next generation has such a high expectation of connectivity. It's like when you and I grew up, it would have been a perhaps an odd thing not to have a telephone in our house, although I grew up with a party line on mine because we live in a rural area. But that's the expectation of the younger generations, is to have that connectivity, and it's not only their expectation; it's going to be great for business.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And now there's one last thing that I wanted to ask you about, and maybe you could just give a little comment on this. This has to do with the legislature deciding to take a little bit longer to decide what to do to, I guess, replace pause. Now, I mean, could you just give us a little bit of background on that and maybe your comment on it?
Well, there's a lot that goes into that. I think that the legislature, has been so focused on education, and I think that is a good thing. But I think they recognize rightfully that one of the complaints that our school teachers and our school administrators and our kids and parents have is, we do too much testing, and then what do the tests mean? And so they want to provide some uniformity to that so that it's not year by year in terms of what is it going to look like and what it's going to mean. And because it's such an important issue in Wyoming, and historically the legislature has committed to it in such high dollar amounts, I think that they want to make sure that they're going to be headed in the right direction. And I think what they're doing now, and I think what they're going to do this session, is to make sure they are methodical, and I think that they want to make sure in terms of all testing and testing standards that they take time to receive input from all citizens and teachers and parents. And so I think they remain highly committed to a great education system in Wyoming, but I also think that they want to make sure that this is we're headed in the right direction. So I think in every way I've just got to applaud the legislature for their laser focus on making education the best possible in Wyoming.
Now, and one of the things I hear, and I don't know a lot about the pause testing program, a lot of people that call my show always talk about that teachers are sometimes forced to teach to the test.
Yeah.
Now, and not teach actual skills, but teach how to answer, the questions on the test. I mean, is the legislature looking to rectify that so that whatever is implemented would be an actual good measurement of actual skills instead of just, again, teaching to the test?
Yeah, I think that's one of several issues that's on their mind, and I think rightfully so. I mean, the idea isn't to say that, hey, we are doing a job so kids can pass a test. We want them to have the thinking skills and analytical skills that they demonstrate that they actually have a grasp of a subject matter. And so, we hear those, and I hear those same concerns from teachers, and I don't think when I hear those concerns either from teachers or parents, I don't think we should dismiss them. I think that's a legitimate concern that we teach to a test. And so we need objective standards. We need to be able to measure ourselves against other states, but we don't want, in my view, so many tests, and we don't want the teachers to be viewed as their job is to teach the tests. It's much more than that, and as I travel the state, I tell you, we've got some extraordinary teachers, and when I hear from them that they're concerned about that, I and the legislature take that to heart.
Okay, well, and I want to thank you again, Governor Mead, for calling in. I know you're quite busy, so I don't want to keep you too much longer, but hopefully we can talk to you again sometime soon.
Always a pleasure, Don. Thanks for having me on again.
Yep, thank you. There you go. It was Governor Mead, and a lot of good stuff there. And I do appreciate the chance to talk to the governor after yesterday, where it was kind of a last minute thing. So I do appreciate the governor being able to call in and spending a little time with us today. How about this? Let's take our break. We'll come back and we'll get into something a little bit different. News Talk 1270 KIML.
Out of town and still want to listen?
Stream the show at DonCarpenterRadio.com.
Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML.